Doorknob traders. We picked doorknob traders because we trade anything that has liquidity and is tradable. This is Ryan. How's it going, Ryan?
Good. Thanks for having me. Let's
Ryan's
talk about the markets.
Ryan's been trading for what year did you start trading?
Active options trading since 2015, but
2015.
kind of involved in investing since 2008.
Yeah, so what I wanted to do today is just go over economic calendar, and then I wanted to jump into the elections because I think the elections are going to be a huge catalyst like in the next week or so. I have the same feeling about this that I did with the Wuhan virus. Like, there's just tons of stuff going on in the background that nobody really is paying attention to, and they're not calculating the risk into the market. So I think this provides a huge opportunity for traders uh, to get a pretty good a, a pretty penny. Have you been following the elections and everything that's going on right now?
I haven't really. I was actually just looking at it a little bit today because you were talking about it, and I was trying to find anybody sort of talking about it, and there, like you said, there wasn't much out there.
There's
Um,
not, and
and
it's it with what's
I'm not
going
a
on.
proponent of being long options, but I was really considering it today.
Yeah, with what's going on right now in the background, like I think we're gonna see a civil war. I think we're it's very probable that we get to that place. Like we're in the eye of the storm right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, just having researched it so little, it's hard to say what I think the probabilities are. But I think with the pot odds of whatever the probability is, if it were to actually happen, I feel like things are pretty cheap. That just take a cheap shot at being long some puts or something.
Yeah, I mean volatility is super low, so all the premium is pretty cheap right now. I'm holding, I think, two calls on the ES. I mean two puts on the ES. But let me just tell you real quick what's going on. I mean, it might not be real quick, but um, but it's nuts. I don't know why my computer's running so slow. I think it's just because I have so many programs open. But there's three major components to what's going on with the election right now. So the first component is the actual fraud that happened. And it happened only in the swing states. Well, the big frauds happened in the swing states. And the swing states all had these Dominion machines. And they're tracking the Dominion machines to Venezuela and being funded by China. $400 million went into Dominion several weeks before the election. The head of Dominion, Eric Coomer, he is an anti-Trumper, and he is a part of Antifa, and he's like the top of Dominion. And he's videotaped in training sessions showing people how to manipulate the vote. So you can change the sensitivity of the machines, and you can make it so that the machines read it as unreadable by the sensitivity of the little box that people color. And if you make it sensitive, then you have to manually you got to manually check it and redo it. And you can literally like change votes. Anybody that wants to change votes, they just put the sensitivity up and then they can change it by being a manual auditor. So they found that tons of things happened with that. They found that right here in this article, the court gave the Trump campaign access to 22 Dominion machines in Michigan. They started doing an audit on those, and they would put the exact same amount of ballots in the machines, and it would give 26% more to Biden than Trump. It would flip votes. And so that was just with some of these machines from one county, and it looks like it's been happening across the board in all the counties. The governors and the secretaries of state in all of these swing states have been funded by China, and they have all of this in evidence. And so they have 5,000 affidavits of sworn testimony that have been presented to the legislative bodies of these 5 states. And all of these legislative bodies can now take their electoral votes back from the Secretary of State in the electoral process on the grounds that it's been fraudulent. And so Pennsylvania is in the process of doing that right now. And so there's different ways that this can go, but the one way is that the legislative bodies take back their electoral vote and then vote for Trump, even though the electoral process voted for Biden if it's proven to be fraudulent. And there's tons and tons, hours and hours of testimonies of people that say that they were blocked out, like Republicans are completely blocked out of the counting process, which is unconstitutional. And just that alone should nullify the vote. So on the side of the election being fraudulent, over 5,000 affidavits, hundreds of hours of testimony before every single one of these 5 swing state legislative bodies. That's the voter fraud part of the component. Then you have Cindy Powell, who is a federal attorney, and she doesn't even care about the election. She's getting evidence from all over these swing states, and she's trying to prosecute the governors and the secretaries of state for being complicit in the voter fraud. So that's a criminal investigation against all of these swing states and the people in charge of the voting process. And then the biggest thing right now is the lawsuit, and I don't know why this is not loading, but is the lawsuit that's happening in Texas. So this is the one right here. So because of the fraud that was happening in these 5 swing states, Texas, the Attorney General of Texas filed a complaint against the 5 states. And because it's a state suing a state, it goes straight to the Supreme Court. And what Texas's argument was there's so much evidence of voter fraud in these 5 swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, I think, or Georgia, that if those 5 counties choose the president, that it nullifies the votes of people who did it the right way. And the argument is that all of these swing states used executive power because of the coronavirus to change the election process in the last hour. And that's unconstitutional because anytime the electoral process is changed, it's a constitutional amendment that needs to be done that has to be checked off at the ballot box and decided by the population. It cannot be an executive order. So Texas filed a suit against all these 5 states. And after they filed suit, 18 other states jumped on board with Texas against those 5 swing states. And now there's Democratic states that are jumping on the side of the swing states. And it's like almost every single state has chosen a side in this argument that's going to the Supreme Court. Do you follow me so far? Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, following.
Yeah, so this thing is going to the Supreme Court. The thing that happened with the Supreme Court earlier on in the process is that they changed their voting process to allow counting of ballots after Election Day. Never happened before in the history of the United States. And there's also precedents from the Supreme Court, I think in 1996, that you can't, any vote that comes in after November 3rd is invalid. But Pennsylvania changed it last minute because of the coronavirus. And so before the vote was even counted, the Supreme Court issued edict to Pennsylvania saying that if you count any ballots after November 3rd, you have to segregate them, anticipating that there's going to be a lawsuit so that those could be thrown out if it's decided that what you did was unconstitutional. Pennsylvania didn't even listen, and they put all their votes together. So there's so much fraud that's happened on every single level. Like, I don't have time to go into everything, but the Supreme Court Pennsylvania is already on the bad side of the Supreme Court because they didn't listen to the edict that was sent before the election. So they had till yesterday, all of these 5 swing states had till yesterday to give their defense before the Supreme Court decides whether or not they're going to take this case. But with all the states that have filed against these 5 swing states, over 18 states have filed with Texas, it looks like the Supreme Court's going to have to take this case. Any input on that?
No, just as you were talking, I was just kind of trying to pull up some articles to read later.
Yeah, so this thing is going to be super explosive. And what will happen if they do deem that these 5 counties did not abide by the Constitution and that they did not have the authority to change the voting process, is that it's going to go back to the legislative bodies of these 5 swing states. And every single legislative body of these 5 swing states are Republican. Every single one of them. So it will give them the mandate to choose what electors they're going to send up to the Electoral College. And what I think is going to happen is they're not going to choose Trump and they're not going to choose Biden. Like, they're not going to choose Biden because the voting process has been shown to be fraudulent in every way. But they're not going to choose Trump because they don't want to disenfranchise the ones that voted for Biden. So I think that they're going to just nullify their vote. And the thing that happens if they nullify the vote is that neither one gets 270. And if that happens, it goes to the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House to decide who the president of the United States is, both of which have a Republican majority. So the Senate has a Republican majority. The Senate chooses the vice president, and the House chooses the president. And the House has more Democratic representatives, but the way that Article 12 of the Constitution works is that every state only has one vote. So even though California has like tons of representatives, they only have one vote. And Hawaii only has a couple of representatives, and they also have one vote. And if you look at how many Republicans versus Democrat states we have represented in the House, it's way more Republican states. So it's going to be the House that chooses who the president is. That's what I think is going to happen in the next couple weeks. And this is what's going on in the market. Like, if you look at what's happening in the market right now, we are at close to all-time highs in the market, with a VIX at all-time lows, like for the year. The year we're at 24 on the VIX, and the high this year was 85. So we're close to the yearly lows since the pandemic on the VIX, and on equities, we're at all-time highs. So I'm short. Hello?
Hey, no, I was just trying to get my bearings on your screens. Just kind of what I'm looking at. I never really thought about it, but I think looking at somebody else's setup, you kind of need a second to figure out what exactly you're looking at. Time frame, indicators, etc. Like, I was looking at your ATRs.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to figure out what that was, but got it now. You were looking at a chart of the VIX somewhere?
Yeah, I just pulled up the VIX, but I'm looking at the ES right now. So at the end of the crash in March, the ATR was like 178 per day. Like, we were swinging 178 points per day, and then we're swinging about 50 points a day right now, which is still a lot. So I think with this the potential of civil unrest and its impact on the markets, I don't think that's been factored into the market right now.
Yeah, just kind of a cursory or a brief look at some of the articles online and stuff. I mean, again, kind of doesn't seem like a lot of people are covering it. I think a lot of people are saying that it's not going to change, that it's all a bunch of speculation and rumors. And I don't know. I feel like I didn't really think that COVID would be like in China. I remember you first sent me a bunch of videos back either early March or late February with some videos coming out of China about coronavirus and talking about how it would probably be here, probably a similar type of situation. And I remember thinking that's crazy. So in this case, I'm just trying to keep an open mind and figure out what what sort of action to take in regards to trading. So, what kind of time frame are you looking at with your puts or just your positions in general?
End
I
of
was thinking maybe
December.
78 days or 60 days.
I'm gonna have to roll them out, but I was thinking that everything was gonna happen, like a lot of things were gonna happen in December, just because the electors have to meet December 15th. And it looks like everything is so messed up in the swing states that they're gonna move the electoral college date. The date that is set in stone that cannot be changed is the January 20th inauguration of the president. So everything has to happen before January 20th. But I think that things will start heating up, ramping up, because if the Electoral College can't meet, the Democrats and the media, they're not going to be able to hide this story. Like, they're going to have to start covering it. Nobody wants to cover the story because they're all in bed with the Democratic Party. So nobody wants to say that there's any validity behind the arguments. But if you follow it, like, I've watched hours of testimonies at not every single one, but probably 3 swing states. I saw the Senate hearings where people that have sworn affidavits, if they lie, they're going to go to prison. They shared their testimonies in front of the state legislative bodies that are Republican, majority Republican, and their stories were compelling. It was like not just eyewitness accounts, but every single fraudulent activity were in sync with each other across these states. It was like a planned strategy of the Democratic Party to push out all of the GOP poll challengers. And then when they weren't being watched, that's when Biden had these huge dumps of votes in the early morning. And all of the same testimonies from all of these swing states is that truckloads of ballots would come in, all for Biden, and very crazy, 150,000 for Biden and 3,000 for Trump, and it would all be in pristine ballots that have not been folded. And absentee ballots, when they count them, they're all from envelopes, and so they all have to be folded. They said these were stacks that had not been folded. And it's across the board. And now they're finding, there's a whistleblower in China that showed pictures and videos of U.S. ballots being printed in China. And the telephone call between the person in America ordering 4 million ballots from this company in China that were shipped over with coronavirus safety supplies. And they went into Mexico and then got into the States from Mexico. So they're uncovering all this stuff about the election that's hard evidence that it was fraudulent.
Did you see the video that Ben Shapiro commented on about there's some footage on ballots that they counted, I guess, without the supervision of some sort of, I don't know what they call those people who supervise the ballot counting.
Yeah, the challengers.
I watched a part of it, but wondering what you thought about it.
I didn't watch the Ben Shapiro one, but I saw that video that he's talking about. There's one that's coming out of Detroit, and they did the same thing that they did in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Georgia. They pushed all the challengers out, and then in Detroit, they have video of this lady going to a table, pulling out from the table a box full of ballots, distributes it to 4 people, and they start putting it in the machines. And then after it comes out of the machines, they'll put it back into the machine. Comes out of the machine, they put it back into the machine. And it's all like it runs for 3 hours of retabulations of, and guaranteed those are stacks of, because they looked at the timestamp of that video and the timestamp of when Biden had his 100,000 votes dumped in Michigan, and it correlates. It's the same time. And that's just one thing. Like, that's not even counting like the vote flipping from Dominion and from like all this other stuff. So it's crazy. And all this stuff is going to hit the courts. And once it hits the courts, there's going to be criminal prosecution. There's going to be indictment of treason. There's going to be people going to jail. There's going to be social unrest. There's already talks. I talked to someone who you know, and very credible in military, and they said that they're getting ready for martial law when this whole thing flips. Because they're already anticipating that there's going to be riots all over the place. And so all the pieces are being put in place for martial law. And I think that that's just like the beginning, because I think that if we have like riots happening all over the country, and then all of these countries that try to manipulate the vote realize that they haven't, like China and other places, that's opportunity for them to attack us. Like, I think China's in a really bad place economically, and they're gonna look at the opportunity to attack us. And that's
pretty wild.
That's like a point.
Pretty black swan.
That's right. That's like a 0.02 delta, 0.01 delta. But if you look historically at pandemics and world wars, they go hand in hand. Like, one black swan opens the door to the next black swan. It's like the chances that you're gonna get killed by a burglar is like a 0.1 delta every night. But once your door is open, like, once somebody breaks into your house, that 0.1 delta of getting killed by a burglar goes up to like 0.3, So I think the same thing with pandemic is like the chances that you're going to experience a pandemic and a world economy shut down and, social unrest and all that is like a 0.1 delta. But once that happens, then it opens the door to other stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I remember Tom Guys talking about that on Tasty Trade with, isn't it once you kind of get in the black swan territory,
tail risk,
the standard modeling sort of goes out the window, right? So
right.
It's almost, you cannot measure at that point how many standard deviations, which is why you could have these 8, 9, 10 standard deviation moves or something. Once you kind of get out there at the tails of the curve.
The tail risks are unaccounted for. Once you get into tail risk, it's like all the metrics of risk is off the table.
Yeah. What do you think? Okay, so that's one possible route that this all goes. What do you think if it doesn't happen? Biden gets elected. What do you any thoughts on what the market does? Do we go to all-time highs?
I think so.
Correct.
I think so.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'd cover. I'm short, so if we get back up to the all-time highs, then I'd cover and put everything in Bitcoin. Yeah, I don't want to. I think we're going to get into low vol and trading's going to be like lame, and I think the hot spot next year will be in crypto. So I'm going to take all my funds out of trading if Biden gets in, and just throw it into cryptocurrency, because I think cryptocurrency next year will outperform the markets. Even though the markets will probably do good, I think that crypto is going to outperform it by a lot. So
yeah. I didn't look at what crypto was doing today. Are we still pulling back?
I think we're like around 18,000 on Bitcoin.
Okay.
And I think it's healthy that it pulls back for a bit. I'm hoping that it just kind of consolidates for another month or so before breaking 20,000 with conviction. But yeah, so that's the play. So short the indexes. Yesterday I was looking
What
at
delta did you buy your puts at?
like 0.5, and I think it got
Okay.
down to like 0.2 because of this huge rally. I
Yeah,
bought
I
it
was
at
looking at
0.5.
like a 2 or 3. Just put
Yeah,
some small
yeah, it's a Hail
amount
Mary.
in there.
I don't know if it's gonna work out, but that's what I did. But you can see like right now, in the past 3 days, we've come from all-time highs, and then we're breaking the moving average of the Bollinger Band and kind of like resting on the Bollinger Band for all the equities, the ES, NQ, YM. Russell, we're still a little bit high off of but I think once you break that moving average, then it opens up the door for it to be able um, to break down a bit. So I'm looking at where we are now and what's happening with the election. I think that the pullback will be at least, down to this level, the 3,200 level.
I'm wondering if we really roll over. I mean, just for instance, looking at the Russell, isn't it usually that they say the small
Bellwether.
caps are the ones to sort of roll over first? I'm surprised we're still seeing strength there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so yesterday I was looking at oil. So I'm short the markets and commodities. CL had a really big day. It went all the way to 47.
You still short oil?
Yeah. So I sold another call in oil. And it looks like oil is pulling back, and that currently 44 support. So I think when it gets down lower, I'm probably going to sell a put. But that's oil. And then it seems like silver. I don't know what to make of this because I think silver's consolidating. Like silver and gold's kind of both been consolidating. But the dollar, the dollar, where's my chart on the dollar? So this is the chart on the dollar, and it looks like the dollar's kind of forming a support right here. And I think as the dollar bounces, that it's gonna cause the metals to pull back more. So I don't want to get in here. I think I'm gonna wait for the dollar to bounce and maybe come back to this support level at 92 or resistance level at 92. And then once it gets to 92, then I'll start going long the metals. But I think
basically like 22 on silver.
Yeah, it'll probably get down to 22, I think, again, before it starts taking off. But I think that the precious metals, with all the money that the government's going to be printing out for the coronavirus, that it's going to put pressure on the dollar. I mean, you can already see what's happened since March. The dollar was at 103 in March, and they printed out trillions of dollars, and it's already down 10% in just a year or less than a
Interesting.
year.
I never even looked at that.
Yeah. So when you look at the dollar and how the dollar went from 103 all the way down to 90, that kind of gives you the reason why equities have done that and why gold has done that. It's not really that these things are getting more expensive. It's really that the dollar has gone down.
Yeah.
So
for some reason, I was under the impression that the dollar was strong for a while amidst this amidst COVID.
yeah, so the dollar
that looks like that.
The dollar tanked when the market tanked, but then it just spiked.
Oh.
Yeah, but since all that printing, it seems like the dollar's being put under pressure. But I think because it's hard to tell what's going to happen because all the other countries' economies suck right now too. So they're not trusting their fiat. Like the strongest fiat in the world is probably the dollar. So if you're to invest in any currency, it would be the dollar. But it's not because the dollar's strong, it's because every other economy is weak. So, I don't know. That's why I think crypto is like such a good hedge right now against global financial risk. And Bitcoin, this is this chart of Bitcoin, what happened since March. Like this is March, and we've gone from 4,000 to 20,000 in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And everybody that has access to like large monies, I think that, and they don't want, just like, Michael Saylor with MicroStrategy, I think there's tons of corporations that are like that. Like they're holding cash and they're seeing what's happening to the dollar. Like if you're holding $100 million, like he was holding $400 million, and if you're holding that kind of money, and this is the chart of what you're holding, you're going to want to get out of that, right? So.
Yeah, or at least reconsider, look at some other options. I guess the one counterpoint, I mean, I think I'm bullish on crypto as well, you know that, but just the idea of cash flow. And I know we've been kind of thinking about that lately, and I don't know about putting it all in crypto. Any other alternatives?
That's the thing, is I don't think there's a lot of alternatives, because anything that you can put money into, people are putting their cash into. They don't want to hold this. They don't want to hold rubbish. Like the dollar's rubbish. So they're putting it into real estate. And if you look at like real estate ETFs, they're all-time highs. Equities are at all-time highs. Anything that's an asset right now is at all-time highs. Treasuries, I mean, look at treasuries.
At all-time highs?
Yeah.
Check, pull up IYR, the ETF. Let's see what that looks like.
IYR. Not all-time highs, but I mean, it's close. This is a weekly chart. And with real estate, the thing that's putting pressure on real estate is commercial, because everybody's moving out of commercial.
Right.
Everyone's working remotely. So you're looking at close to all-time highs, even with commercial real estate in the bubble that it's in right now. I mean, you look at bonds. Bonds, you have like no interest. Like you have almost zero interest, and bonds are at an all-time high. So there's very few places where someone can put their money. And I think there's going to be a huge, like, that's why Michael Saylor put all of his cash, $400 million, into Bitcoin.
Did he end up putting a full 400?
250 right away, and then I think he had plans to put the rest of it in.
Got it.
But at the time of his interview, I think it was 250 or something.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. No, I was supposed to go to prayer, but wow. Wheat had a huge move today. Look at that.
Jeez.
3.
Do you have any positions in there?
No, I never trade wheat. I just have it there to look at. Wheat and soy. I sold a call yesterday on natural gas because I saw CL had that big jump. Mm-hmm. So natural gas had a big jump as well, like a bigger jump. And it went up even more today. It went up another 2% today. But I sold a call on, is it UNG? UNG is natural gas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sold a call on UNG like 25 delta call. So I'm probably taking a loss on that. UNG. No, I didn't take a loss on it yet. Probably just because volatility was so high yesterday. So $5 profit.
Are you up in this account?
I'm up in in one account 5,000, and then I'm down in the other account by 3,000. So up 2,000.
Wow. Impressive considering we've just been going up.
Yeah, I'm down 15. I have 1,500 negative delta. It's
Nice.
in the ES. I mean, it's just a play account, so. But yeah, 1,500. -3 contracts, and then -2 contracts in 2.
That 1,500 delta, is that SPY weighted deltas?
SPY weighted.
SPY weighted, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Beta weighted SPY, got it.
So, yeah, those are the plays for this episode. So those of you that are watching, thanks for sticking around. Can leave comments in the section below. Any additional thoughts, Ryan, before we close out? I think next week is the week that the Electoral College is supposed to meet. Yeah, next week. What is that? Today's the 11th. Like next week, Tuesday, they're supposed to meet. I don't think that they're gonna. I think it's gonna have to be pushed back, and the Supreme Court's gonna have to listen to the arguments. But things are gonna start happening pretty quickly from now till January.
Yeah, we'll see. See what happens.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, and
Yeah, for sure.
we'll see you
May all
tomorrow.
your options expire worthless.
Yeah, and with you too. Thanks be to God.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.
See ya.
Okay. Bye.